Hello, dear listeners of Echo Motion. Thank you for joining us for another exciting journey. Today, we have a story filled with suspense and mystery that will keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. So, turn up the volume and get ready, because today's tale is called The Chosen One. In the small town of Crestview, there's an annual event that everyone knows and is central to the community's identity. The ritual known as the Chosen One. This ritual takes place on the first day of September, the anniversary of the town's founding, and is held by the shores of a beautiful blue lake located in the heart of the town. This lake, known for its great depth of over 230 feet, is a place of significant importance to the community. The ceremony is highly anticipated, with only 5 slots available for participation each year. The application process is competitive, with a rigorous review to ensure that candidates comply with all the rules of the Chosen One event. The ritual begins with a drawing to determine who the winners will be and who will be the Chosen One. This year, the entrants are a diverse group, each with personal reasons for wanting to win the cash prize. 1. Mr. Walter Thompson, a 65-year-old local farmer. Walter is struggling financially due to a series of poor harvests and accumulated debts. He hopes the prize money will help him pay off his debts and improve the conditions on his farm. 2. Mrs. Margaret Wilson, a 45-year-old teacher. Margaret wants to use the money to cover her husband's medical treatment as he battles a chronic illness. She also dreams of opening a small library in town for her students. 3. John Miller, a 30-year-old young entrepreneur. John recently opened a cafe in town, but the business is struggling to take off due to debts and competition. Additionally, John has been dealing with a gambling addiction, which has further exacerbated his financial troubles. 4. Ana Perez, a 38-year-old nurse. Ana is in a tough spot with the medical expenses of her elderly mother, who requires constant care. She hopes the prize will ease the financial burden and allow her mother to receive the necessary treatment. 5. Emily Carter, the youngest participant at just 12 years old. Emily comes from a very poor family and was entered into the event by her parents in hopes of winning the prize money. They see this as an opportunity to improve the family's quality of life and secure a better future for Emily and her siblings. Each entrant has a personal story driving their participation, and all hope to be among the 4 drawn to receive the prizes. As the drawing approaches, anticipation builds, and the community watches closely, eager to see how fate will unfold for these 5 brave participants. The day of the drawing finally arrived, and the town of Crestview was buzzing with excitement. Families gathered around the lake, whispering among themselves about the participants and their motives. As usual, Mr. Thompson led the event, maintaining an air of solemnity and respect for the process. He once again explained the rules and the significance of the ceremony while the participants waited anxiously to hear their names. The origin of this event dates back to the town's founding day, marked by an unexpected tragedy. The mayor's son fell into the lake during the celebrations and drowned. What was meant to be a day of joy turned into a moment of sorrow and grief for the entire community. The following year, in memory of his lost son, the mayor organized the first drawing. It was a simple ritual, using a wooden box the son used to store his toys. The box, still used today, has a circle on the lid. The drawing is calculated as follows: the age of the town, which this year is 88 years, multiplied by 1,000 times 1, gives the amount of the first prize. For the second prize, it's the town's age multiplied by 1,000 times 2, and so on, up to the fourth prize. During the drawing, 5 iron balls, each containing a participant's name tied inside, are placed in the box. The event's organizer then draws the balls one by one and reads the names. This year, the prizes will be $88,000, $176,000, $264,000, and $352,000 respectively. With 5 participants, the one whose name is not drawn is declared the chosen one. The 5 entrants stood in front of the crowd. Mr. Walter Thompson, with his hands calloused from years of farming, appeared calm, but there was a silent determination in his eyes. Mrs. Margaret Wilson held her husband's hand tightly, visibly worried about his health and their uncertain future. John Miller, trying to hide his anxiety, couldn't help but look at the ground, knowing his gambling habits had put him in a difficult situation. Mr. Thompson took the wooden box in his hands and looked at the entrants, asking in a firm voice, "Are you ready to find out who has been chosen?" The whole town responded in unison, a resounding yes echoing through the area. He then began shaking the box, moving it side to side to build excitement and ensure the draw was fair. The sound of the iron balls clinking against each other resonated in everyone's hearts, but especially in Emily's small, innocent heart, as she awaited the result with a mix of hope and fear. He placed the wooden box on the table in front of him and slowly inserted his hand into the narrow opening, pulling out the first ball. After removing it, he held it firmly in his hands and lifted it above his head for everyone to see. The first drawn winner of the $88,000 prize is. He paused dramatically, looking at the paper, then looked at each entrant in the eyes. Then he turned to the town crowd and shouted the first name, John Miller. The announcement of John Miller as the first winner was met with a wave of emotion. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, celebrating the young entrepreneur's luck. Many in the town knew John and were aware of the financial struggles he faced, especially due to his gambling addiction. Hearing his name called was a moment of relief and hope, not only for him, but for everyone rooting for his recovery and success. John, visibly emotional, approached Mr. Thompson to receive the certificate symbolizing the $88,000 prize. His eyes shone with emotion and gratitude as he thanked the crowd, his friends and family. The town came together in that moment, sharing the joy of seeing one of their own granted a chance to start anew. The celebratory atmosphere was palpable, with laughter, hugs, and words of encouragement echoing everywhere. The other participants clapped along with the crowd, expressing their happiness for John Miller's win. There was a mix of emotions in the air. While everyone was glad for John's significant win, tension grew among the participants. They knew the next prizes were even larger, bringing a sense of hope. However, they also felt fear, aware of what the final drawing would mean. As the excitement settled, Mr. Thompson prepared to draw the next name. The crowd hushed in anticipation, knowing the stakes were rising with each subsequent prize. The remaining participants, Walter Thompson, Margaret Wilson, Anna Perez, and young Emily Carter, stood in a row, each carrying the weight of their hopes and fears. The atmosphere was charged with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, as everyone understood that not being drawn meant being the chosen one. Mr. Thompson reached into the box once more, his hand moving deliberately as the crowd held its breath. The rustling of the balls echoed in the silence, heightening the suspense. He pulled out a ball, holding it up high, but kept it closed in his fist for a moment longer, building the tension. With a slow, deliberate motion, he unfolded the slip of paper inside. His eyes scanned the name, then he looked up, meeting the eyes of each participant. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the announcement. Finally, in a clear voice, he declared, "The winner of the second prize, $176,000 is Margaret Wilson." A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by applause and cheers as Margaret Wilson stepped forward to accept her prize. Her face lit up with a mixture of relief and joy, tears welling in her eyes. She clutched the certificate tightly, overwhelmed by the unexpected blessing. The other participants smiled and clapped, sharing in her happiness, though their own anxiety was palpable. As Margaret Wilson held her certificate and the crowd applauded, Mr. Thompson turned back to the box once again. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the scene and painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The evening breeze cooled the air, bringing a slight chill that seemed to heighten the tension among those present. The participants' expressions were a mix of relief and apprehension. The prizes were getting larger, but the number of remaining contestants was shrinking, intensifying the fear of the final draw. Mr. Thompson, with a serious expression, reached into the box for the third time, carefully mixing the iron balls. The metallic sound echoed across the square, causing everyone to hold their breath. He finally drew a ball, holding it firmly and raising it above his head. The third drawn, winner of the $264,000 prize, is... He paused longer this time. The crowd and participants locked in anxious silence. Mr. Thompson looked at the paper, then at the faces of the remaining contestants. Ana Perez seemed to be trying to control her emotions, while Walter Thompson maintained a look of restrained expectation. Young Emily Carter, clutching her parents' hands, watched with wide eyes. Finally, Mr. Thompson turned to the crowd and announced loudly, "Walter Thompson." Applause erupted again, but there was a more subdued tone. Walter Thompson, despite his calm appearance, let out a sigh of relief as he walked to receive his certificate. He thanked the crowd, receiving handshakes and hugs from familiar faces. However, everyone knew the tension was building. Only 2 participants remained, and the inevitable final draw loomed. The mood, once cheerful and festive, began to turn more somber, reflecting the growing anxiety of the situation. With Walter Thompson's name announced and his prize awarded, the atmosphere at the event shifted dramatically. The sky was now a deep orange, shadows lengthening, and the air cooling quickly. The tension was palpable, almost suffocating, as everyone knew the most critical moment was about to occur. All eyes turned to Ana Perez and Emily Carter, the last 2 remaining participants. Both were nervous expressions, but Emily's eyes, in particular, reflected a mix of hope and fear. Mr. Thompson, aware of the gravity of the moment, reached into the box for the last time. He stirred the iron balls slowly, the metallic sound echoing like a harbinger of uncertainty and suspense. With all eyes fixed on him, he finally withdrew a ball, holding it tightly in his fully closed hand. The silence was complete, broken only by the gentle breeze and the distant sound of the lake's waters. Texto Padro turning to the last participants, Mr. Thompson broke the silence with a calm and measured voice. He looked directly at Ana Perez, who was visibly tense, and asked, "If you win, Ana, what will you do with the prize?" Ana, her voice shaky, answered vaguely, "I would help my mother and pay off some debts." Mr. Thompson then turned to Emily Carter, the young girl still clutching her parents' hands tightly. "And you, Emily, what would you do with the money if you won?" Emily glanced at her parents before responding, her voice clear and full of touching innocence. "I would give it all to my parents. They would know what to do." The crowd remained in expectant silence as Mr. Thompson still held the last ball closed in his hand. The moment was charged with emotion and suspense, with everyone awaiting the final revelation. Mr. Thompson, with the last iron ball still clutched in his hand, looked at the crowd and then at the final two participants. The silence was overwhelming, the tension in the air almost tangible. He slowly opened his hand, revealing the name attached to the ball. The crowd was so quiet, it felt like time had stopped. In a grave and controlled voice, he read the name aloud. Ana Perez. In that instant, the entire town fell into a dead silence. No one clapped, no one spoke, not even breaths were heard. Everyone knew what the final draw meant for Emily. All eyes turned to the young girl who stood frozen, still holding her parents' hands. The weight of tradition and the approaching fate hung over everyone, creating a moment of almost unbearable tension. Ana Perez, visibly relieved and smiling, walked up to Mr. Thompson to receive her $352,000 prize. Ignoring Emily's imminent fate, Ana took her prize and walked away without looking back. Meanwhile, Emily's parents, with dark and resigned expressions, slowly released their grip on their daughter. An event official approached and led Emily toward the organizer, as an oppressive silence hung over the crowd. Emily, who had been paralyzed with fear, was suddenly overcome by a rush of adrenaline. She began to scream desperately, "No, no, help. Mom, Dad, don't let them do this to me." Her cries of terror echoed through the area, but no one dared to intervene or even react. The overwhelming silence of the crowd contrasted sharply with the girl's desperate screams. The event organizers brought out a large iron ball, similar to the ones used in the drawing, but much larger. They tied the ball to Emily's feet as she struggled and cried, pleading for help. Her heart-wrenching screams filled the air, but no words of comfort or protest came from the crowd. In a final act, the organizers led her to the edge of the lake and, without a word, cast her into the dark waters. Bubbles rose to the surface as Emily's cries and gasps turned into absolute silence. Her small body sank into the depths of the lake, and the last bubble of air escaped from her lungs. The crowd, still and silent, watched the end of the ritual, enveloped in a silence so dense it felt suffocating. No words were spoken, no sounds were heard, until the last bubble of air vanished, taking with it the final trace of Emily Carter's life.